And another thing that I keep mentioning, and I'll keep mentioning throughout the regatta, is it really is great to see support, not only from the majority of sort of the UK clubs and schools, but also sort of foreign interests. You know, we've seen crews from Switzerland and New Zealand already, and we're only sort of at 3 o'clock on the Friday afternoon. So expect to see a lot more international representation. The USA, I know, always come across with a whole sort of contingent, an armada of crews. So it's brilliant to see that Henley Women's, for many women, represents the pinnacle of sort of regatta racing through the summer, not just here in the UK.
Absolutely, it's great. I'm a Henley resident myself, and it's great to see in the week build up to this event, all the foreign crews seem to arrive about a week out, and so we've had floods, what seems like, of US college crews walking around the town. But it is great to see, and great to see the crews, as you say, representing what is the pinnacle of women's rowing in the UK at the moment.
Well, Steve, brace yourself, because the Royal's only 2 weeks away, so this town just becomes something else for the next 3 weeks, essentially. Sleepy town in the Oxfordshire countryside becomes pretty much the social occasion of the year, doesn't it?
All these rowers turn up, unbelievable.
Well, we can just see there, Club d'Avron. And again, my French accent is pretty poor, but making their way down in race 34 with a margin of control over Brooks. So we can probably have a look at what's happening, which I know it's left the start now. Race 35, Lee and Reading Rowing Club. I'm actually talking complete rubbish. They haven't left the start. But I thought I'd gear everyone up to make sure that they were aware that it was happening next.
But it's interesting with these pairs, you know, when you're racing these foreign crews, you never quite know what you're going to get. It's always a little bit difficult to do the research and the homework when the foreign crews come over. And Brooks certainly won't be scared of racing anybody that turns up in this course. That their setup, their program, the results they've got are no secret. So the Brooks pair, they will have been expecting to be competitive here. They will have been preparing to win this race. So this really is a classy pair that the Swiss have sent over, and they really have taken control and paddling well within themselves now up towards the finish line.
Well, I imagine when Brooks saw the draw, they'd have thought, not the crew we wanted to race. So you can see there, crossing the line, Club d'Avron Vesenaz of Switzerland. The Berkshire station taking the win over Oxford Brooks, so we can move back up to the start for race 35, which is due off. Well, it was due off 2 minutes ago, but it is Lee Rowing Club on the Berkshire station and Reading Rowing Club on the Buckinghamshire station.
I think, looking at the start line, we have a problem of a flock of geese disrupting play on the start line there.
It is the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen, but geese still are the scourge of so many rowing events.
Not even the drone can sort the geese out.
Yeah, it does look like there's a safety boat out. So that gives us airtime to fill, Steve.
Well, it's great to see with these pairs. I must admit, as a fan of rowing, obviously, and someone that steered the course myself, there is a slightly sick fascination with watching the pairs steering, because it is so difficult to steer these pairs and keep them straight. And certainly if you're steering the boat whilst rowing as a steersman, so whether there's no cocks on board, it's actually quite a lonely place for those first 10 or 15 strokes, when all you want to do is get the boat safely in between the two sets of booms. It comes as a bit of a surprise if you're over the line of buoys and that first upright hits your oars. You know about it in all sorts of ways very quickly. And so these pairs, as we said, are the most technical type of sweet boat to manoeuvre and to steer. And certainly off the start line, when the rate is high, the power is going down, that's when the boat can fishtail and you can potentially come off your line. And so I'm always very interested to watch those first 100 metres, watch the first 100 metres of rowing, particularly with the vantage point we have here to make sure the crews do safely make it in between the two sets of booms.
Well, we're getting a high quality rowing and country file as well here, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoying a flock of geese, slowly navigating their way off the course. Credit to the safety boat for making sure that they get off safely, but it does probably mean that we are able to get underway in race 35 imminently. That's Lee Rowing Club, who actually placed third in women's championship pairs on the Sunday of an event which has not been named, but I imagine that'll either be the Met or Wallingford, and then up against Reading Rowing Club. And we're starting to see a bit of a pattern here, Steve, developing in that the same names of crews are cropping up time and time again, and not only that, the same names are winning events, the likes of Leeds, the Agecrofts, the Thames, and it's great to see that spread of clubs who sort of are driving club rowing forward in the UK.
Absolutely. It's always great when you find yourself in a club system that's working well. It really is self-fulfilling. You'll get that one crew will tend to start the snowball, and before you know it, you've got, as we see with Thames, first, second, third eights, training together, pushing each other hard through the entire season. And it really is great to see that we've got clubs up and down the country with large programmes, but successful programmes as well, and doing such a good job of representing their clubs here today.
Well, umpires' flag's gone down and race 35 underway. Lee on, I suppose, the closest to your picture, and Reading on the far side, and Lee looking like they got the better of the two starts in the opening strokes. Just a bit more, I suppose the word is frantic, a little bit more aggressive, and maybe a little bit more aggressive with their steering. They've come right out into the middle of the course here. The umpire not seeing a need to intervene at this stage. Just see there, Lee on the left in their orange kit.
That's it, a couple of looks left and right from the bow seat there, just making sure
there we
the
go.
first warning comes out now for Reading.
Reading being warned. Well, you weren't wrong about the first 100 metres of a pairs race.
And it's interesting, on that Buckinghamshire station as well, you've got the trees from the island, and it almost feels like you're steering into them if you go in a straight line, because the trees actually come out into the course. So you have to practice that in the warm-up paddles beforehand, and you just have to hold your nerve, accept that the trees are going to come over to you, don't let the foot wiggle around, and just keep that boat as straight as you can. It's a very, very easy line to come off, but that Reading crew seems to be back on it now, and now need to stay in contention. Don't let Lee get too big a gap on them. Bring themselves back into contention for the middle third of this race.
Well, Reading's still making an absolute beeline for some booms at the moment. Sort of got an alternative camera angle just about to see that they've straightened up. And this will all play into Lee's hands, because every single jolt on that rudder from the bow girl of the Reading crew is going to slow the boat down. It's like a tiny little break on the run and the flow of the shell. So this will be, I suppose, music to the ears of Lee. And at the moment they're making the best of it. They have got a lead. Although from that camera angle it's a little hard to determine what that is, but as they come down towards our fixed commentary position, I'd say that's probably around a length actually, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want your crew to just be thinking about rowing. You don't want the eyes just looking out sideways, wondering if there's a boom getting a bit closer or a crew on the other side of the boat. You just want everyone focused down the line of the boat, able to concentrate on the rowing stroke. Funny enough, as you get a bit tired, that becomes a lot easier to do. As we see now, they're coming past us. Lee just opening up that lead to about a length and a half. Bit of support for the Lee crew down outside of the commentary box as well. That's it, and Lee just starting to inch away. Still a decent rate there, kicking along. They'll look to get about another length or so, I would have thought, before they start trying to control this race up to the finish line.
Well, these are, of course, championship pairs, so the pedigree of rowing is really good. And you'd expect mature performances. So I wouldn't say that race 35 is by any means done and dusted, but race 36 has left the state boats, and it's the Tideways Sculler School on the Berkshire station up against Wellington Rowing Club New Zealand, whose composite we saw crash out in the 8s earlier today, so maybe their pair can sort of make amends, so to speak. But at the moment, you can just see on the bottom left of your screen the two crews converging again, having some sort of teething issues with the steering in the pairs event so far. At the moment, it's the Tideways Sculler School domestic interest who have the lead, and what looks like a good lead actually in the opening stages.
That's it, Wellington getting very close to the booms there.
Intimately familiar.
And they've adjusted, they've come away. And you can see the Sculler's crew as well, they started aggressively, managed to just get their noses in front before the end of the island, which allowed them to just come off their line slightly without crashing in to the crew from New Zealand. They're both back on station now, and it's the crew from Tideways Sculler School over by Chiswick Bridge, out to clear water already over this crew from New Zealand.
It's a long way to come, New Zealand. It's not quite the 10:27 train from Paddington that I got this morning. So I think it's difficult to sort of broach how quick you are in comparison to domestic interest when you do make the trip. But you do expect a certain standard. And Wellington, although they are a good pair here, just getting outgunned by Tideway Sculler School, who, as everybody knows who follows the domestic rowing circuit, are one of the premier women's sort of sculling and rowing centres, and showing that here.
Absolutely, yeah. Sculler's head coach Kieran has got an incredible programme going there that is consistently producing fast crews. Very much like the Brooks setup, Scullers will be here expecting to beat anybody that turns up on the start line. As you see here, the crew from New Zealand, Bauer just looking over her shoulder, trying to figure out what the distance is, talk to the stroke seat, letting her sit in it. Still getting very close to the booms there, she's having a look over.
They are playing cat and mouse with those booms, and Scullers have moved right across as well. No, they've moved away again. You see, that's not going to help their flow at all. That's the problem. Every single correction on that rudder is damaging to the flow and speed of the boat. And Wellington now coming into the middle of the course, having definitely some issues with their steering. You can just see on the top right hand side of your screen, Lee have continued to lead in race 35 and are moving down towards the finish line in a comfortable position. And Tideway Scullers, who actually placed second in the women's championship pairs at the Met on the Saturday, the Metropolitan Regatta, of course, happened about 3 weeks ago. So a crew with a lot of domestic speed and domestic form, and showing that here. They'll be enjoying their row down the course as they come into the enclosures.
And that can often be a tactic here with these crews. When you know you're going to get a couple of lengths lead, it can be in your interest, shall we say, to just drift off your station towards the middle of the course and just send those puddles down, send that slightly rougher water down to the other crew. Bit of a psychological advantage, so they know that you're in charge, but also it can make the rowing slightly tougher for them. So I'm sure Scullers here, as they've got that lead, they've just decided to move out to the middle, and we can see the umpire, I think, probably agrees with that, as they've kept the flag down. There's no warnings. The umpire thinks it's not going to be impeding the race here. As I look up, I can see a flock of geese crossing the river just in front of that Scullers crew. Hopefully that's not going to have any impact on this race either.
It's like they just have no respect for the fact that we're trying to run a rowing event here. Yeah, Scullers enjoying their row past the enclosures. It looks like the geese have moved out of the way.
But that's it, total control. It's the best feeling when you're racing one-on-one. When you know you've got it won, you know you can drop that rate down. They'll be thinking about this race still, but they'll have half an eye on the next round now. Once they're through the line, it'll be the warm down, check the timetable of racing and start preparing for the next round.
So you can just see there, race 36 on its way down the course. Tideway Scullers having taken their rate right down, leading the crew from New Zealand by a comfortable margin. So we can probably move our way back up the course for race 37, which is our opening heat of Championship Singles. Bath University on the Berkshire station and KSRV Nord from Holland on the Buckinghamshire station. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because every year I get it wrong. At the moment, it's the sculler from Bath approaching the barrier, who has a couple of lengths.
This is the first of the sets of the Championship Singles, sponsored by the Scott Investment Partners, which is a local firm in Henley. Walter Scott has been a great beneficiary of rowing in general, having sponsored many international scullers in the past, Peter Haining being one. And he still rows on the course.
Will he be watching today?
He will be.
Well, he'll be watching two good scullers here, because it looks like Bath University, Mulholland, taking the race to Sanders of Nord. Bath University sculler placed fourth in women's singles tier 2 at the Metropolitan Regatta. So again, another crew or another sculler who we have a bit of international or a bit of domestic form for. And there we go, we can see that's about 3 or 4 lengths actually.
and Mulholland sweeping her boat along very nicely. They're gradually approaching yet another flock of geese, probably the same flock as before, just drifting onto the other side of the course. It looks as though they're both going to clear it quite comfortably there, not getting in the way.
So racing coming thick and fast now. Race 37, as you can see, underway, but also race 38, if you look towards the bottom of your screens, another heat of the championship singles, and it's Nottingham Rowing Club on the Berkshire station who are facing up against Norwich. We'll keep an eye on both of those. And again, the crews in race 38, Nottingham and Norwich, having some issues with their steering. Of course, in a single, you don't steer with a foot plate, you steer essentially by pulling harder on one side. You can see the angle of attack there from the sculler from Norwich is not a healthy one. She's heading straight towards the booms at the moment.
Both scullers coming up the island, attacking really hard. At the moment, the Nottingham sculler, Campbell Ord, seems to just have just about clear water over her opponent from Norwich. And locking on really nicely, good leg drive, but relaxed in the shoulders.
Yeah, no surprise to see this Nottingham sculler doing well. Campbell Ord of Nottingham Rowing Club. She's raced well all year, actually, placing well at Wallingford and the Metropolitan Regatta. So I don't think it's necessarily the steering that's helped her get out to an early lead. It's just the fact that she's got the form and the pedigree, and actually perhaps more horsepower than her opponent from Norwich.
There's not a lot of stream at the moment, although we've had rain recently in the area. It's fairly quiet on the course. The Nottingham sculler is, of course, right over by the towpath side, so very close to the bank. So if there is any stream, she'll have the advantage at the moment. Which changes a little when it gets beyond the barrier, when the course seems to drift over to the other side of the river. And this Berkshire station then has a slight disadvantage. I don't think it's going to be a problem for Campbell Ord, though.
Yep, enjoying her scull down the course. Campbell Ord in race 38. And the result of race 36, which was the last heat of the championship pairs, was a win for the Tideway Sculler School over Wellington Rowing Club New Zealand. The verdict easily. So impressive performance there from scullers to dispatch opposition from right the way across the other side of the globe. And here we go, Paul. We can just see Nottingham. Just every stroke, she's just moved out a little bit more, and actually now, I would say she has complete control over this.
Campbell Ord's boat is sculling quite nice and flat. She's not dipping the stern as she's picking up the catch. Very tidy, very smooth and easy. It's always a long way in a single down the regatta course, but when you're making it look and feel as easy as that, it does show how sculling can be done.
So there we go, top right of your picture, you can see the contest unfolding between Nottingham and Norwich. So we'll move back up the course, one eye on that of course, but one eye also on race 39, Grosvenor, Archer of Grosvenor on the Berkshire station up against Lewis of Reading University. And they've just left the stake boats coming out from the shadows of Temple Island. Looks like a more determined, perhaps more fluid stroke from the sculler from Reading, which should be no surprise considering they are a high performance sculling centre. And her line looks a lot more true at the moment as well, and I think she's getting the dividends from that, because I think she has a lead.
As the Grosvenor sculler seems to have gone across to the centre of the course, it's always that worrying part as you come towards the end of the island and the booms and posts start. You certainly don't want to get tied up in the buoys, and that first post can be quite catastrophic. She's straightened up there now, and it's just a fraction down on Lewis from Reading.
Booms no joke at Henley, demarcating the course, and absolutely the most distinctive feature of the match racing, which we see every year. And every year, crews are warned time and time again, watch for the gusts as you come out from behind the island, watch out because it will catch you by surprise. And we always see crews of varying professionalism and varying quality, speed and age collide. And that is a race ender, basically. It does stop your progress completely, and it's rare to see a crew collide with the booms and come back and win. But at the moment, both these scullers staying their lines well, staying on their respective sides of the courses, and actually we're in for what looks like a pretty good race here.
Yes, there can only be a few feet in it, really. Grosvenor, maybe a slight advantage, just coming up the course. Both good competitive rates.
It just appears to be a bit more horsepower in the Grosvenor boat. She's coming past here. See, she's responded really well to a slightly erratic start, and now is stretching out for clear water ahead of her opposition from Reading University.
All these races are closely followed by these wonderful umpires' launches. Pomeroy from the lower part of the Thames down on the tideway. Amaryllis is a local boat, once again, in fact, owned by Walter Scott of Scott Investment Partners. He keeps it at his house, Barn Elms, halfway along the course.
I feel like you and Walter Scott might be friends.
We row in a pair together, indeed.
It's getting a lot of airtime. No, you're right. The umpires' launches are one of the most sort of unique things about the Henley regattas, and also one of the most beautiful things, because they are, I suppose, old boats, but they are so beautiful to watch as they come past, and great to actually get a ride on. If you ever do get a chance to get out and follow a race, it's a great experience. But you can just see here, in all her glory, the Grosvenor Sculler making her way down the course, really looking long and strong here. Nice relaxed stroke, no real pressure. It looks easy, Paul, which is always, I suppose, a sign that it perhaps is easy.
Indeed, it's like most sports. If you're doing it really well, although the power is on and the pressure's on, if you're ahead in a single scull, then you can keep an eye on your opponent. You can just relax that little bit to make it look so much easier than it really is. I'm sure she'll be feeling it, despite leading at the moment. The race is not over yet. Singles can change their speed very quickly. However, I think she has this one in the bag.
So a few results to give you as we watch Grosvenor and Reading University, the two scullers in the Championship single sculls, make their way down the course. Race 33, going back to the Championship pairs, was a win for Leander Club by 2.5 lengths over Cardiff. Club de Avron Resonaz of Switzerland beat Oxford Brooks by 3.5 lengths in race 34. 35 went the way of Lee Rowing Club by 2.5 lengths over Reading, and the Tideway Scullers School saw a stiff opposition from Wellington Rowing Club of New Zealand, beating them easily in race 36. 37 and 38 underway as we speak, and at the moment it looks like Bath University won race 37, beating the sculler from Holland, and Nottingham Rowing Club beating Norwich Rowing Club in race 38 by 4 lengths. Watching race 39 make its way down the course. Next on the 1500 metre stretch will be race 40, which is another